Greetings and salutations, and thanks for clicking on the video. We're going to talk about tweaking up Linux Mint 17.2 Cinnamon Edition. Yes, this is a retake of a video I posted just a little while ago. I realized that I had skipped some things that I really wanted to talk about, so I'm going to take my time this time and talk more about it. I've talked about some of these settings in the last few videos I've done about Linux Mint, but the idea here is to put them all in one place so we can talk about them. So here's your settings menu when you open it up, and of course this is what you would want to do with the system after you had everything installed and updated. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about, and you may want to set this before you actually run your updates, is go to your software sources, and we will open that up and take a look here. The first thing that you see is that you can select your software sources, and you can select different mirrors for the Linux Mint repositories or the base Ubuntu repositories. And the idea is that when you click on this, it will go out to the internet and it will find the mirror that is closest to you, and you're going to get the most reliable and fastest download speed from. So for instance, for Ubuntu, the base, I have the liquidweb.com Ubuntu mirrors set, and this is how you set them. Just click on it and then it'll start pinging out across the internet, and every mirror that it knows about for Linux Mint or Ubuntu, it's going to send a ping to, and when it gets the results back of how quickly it gets the ping, it will rank them on this list, and you choose the fastest. And for some reason or other, this one here is really just going fast, but it's outside my country, so I'm not going to click on that one. Probably a good idea to choose one that's within your country. So I've already got mine set up, and I know that Liquid Web is just about the fastest, so we'll leave that alone. Here is where you can also work with PPAs. So if you add PPAs to your system, here's where you can manage them. The additional repositories, you can add repositories here manually, or you can open up the GitDeb repository if that's something that you're into. Authentication, keys, and maintenance are things that you really don't need to be messing around with unless you absolutely have to. In other words, you would probably go there if you had a problem. And there's also some maintenance things in here that really you don't need to mess with unless you have a problem, and that would be, if you look up, if you have a problem and you find that the solution is to go to those things and do something, that's when you do it. So that's the first thing, and the rest of this is just tweaks. First thing I want to show you here is the backgrounds. They are really quite groovy. Oop, no, I hit Bluetooth. Sorry. Backgrounds. Scroll up. Duh. Okay. You get all these lovely sets of backgrounds here, and these are all Mint releases from the past, so you can choose from here. I happen to be using Kiana. I think that's how that's pronounced. And it's because it has all these lovely landscapes and pictures, and I love this beach photo. I find it very calming. There's a lot of blue and a lot of earth tones in here. And I have it set up to go as a slideshow, so I get a new one every 15 minutes, and I have it set to do that at random. You can do that with your own pictures folder if you like, or I guess you could create your own folder and do that as well. Let's look at the effects. These are things about the Cinnamon desktop that you can turn on and turn off, and this is the stock settings. I've not messed with this. You can feel free to do that if you like. Fonts, of course, this is very important. You can scale the fonts to fit your screen, whatever looks most comfortable to you. When you install Linux Mint, most of the time it will automatically come up to the native resolution of your screen. And if you're using open source drivers, like in my case, I have an older AMD card and I do not have any proprietary drivers available to me, native resolution is pretty much all I got. So you can actually scale the desktop to make things bigger or smaller, whatever looks nice to you. There's actually more to that we'll get to in just a minute. Themes is a pretty cool thing to take a look at. I have themed this up just a little bit, and I'll zoom out and show you my theme. Okay, so we have I'm using the Numix for the actual menu and the panel. And then as far as the windows and the window decorations are concerned. I'm just using the Mint X Sand themes there. If you want to get more, you just click here and it'll open up this window. And if you want to download more themes, there are many, many, many to choose from. You can click available themes, and that will go out to the internet and get you even more themes than what is installed by default. I've installed a bunch, as you can see, just playing around with it. I would show you what that looks like, but my internet connection is very slow. I have Verizon DSL, and if I hit anything that has a lot of pings to it when it's going out to download a bunch of files, it usually bogs down in the middle. So I don't want to do that while I'm doing a video. Next thing we're going to talk about is accessibility. Here's where you can set up your zoom feature. Large text comes on by default if you go above 1.2. You can also set it for high contrast, which will change the theme to a high contrast theme. And there are other things that you can set up, like your screen reader and beeps for caps lock and things like that. There's a lot of options in there. So if you are disabled and you need to have accessibility features turned on, that's where you do it, which is actually a very wonderful thing about Linux Mint. I honestly believe they have some of the best accessibility in the Cinnamon desktop of any of the desktops. Account details. This is where you can go in and just change your picture and put your name in and other information that you'd like to have associated with your account. Applets. These are little things that you can put down in the panel and get more if you want. I kind of like the stock set, and I'm happy with that, so I'll leave that alone. Date and time, of course, that's very important. Here is where you will be able to set whether your clock is in 24-hour mode or whether it shows the date or the seconds, and there's some other things that you can change in there as well. Desklets. These are little applications that you can download, and they live on your desktop, sort of like the gadgets in Windows 7. And I really haven't played with this very much, and I'm not kind of into that sort of thing anyway. But if you want to play around with it, knock yourself out. Desktop. Here is where you can set what appears on your desktop. On my desktop, I have the home directory, a trash can, and a mounted volume will pop up. You also have the option of having computers and your network to be there as well. So that's pretty awesome. Extensions. I'm not really sure what this does. This is the first time I've opened it, to tell you the truth. I don't think I have any extensions installed for the Cinnamon desktop, so therefore it doesn't really apply to me. This is some interesting settings in here to talk about this general. The first thing is the interface scaling. Now, if you had one of those monitors, like a big, giant monitor that was like 4K or something like that, and you were running Linux Mint, you could change this to scale the screen. For high DPI, you could double it, and that would make things easier to see. I'm not going to do that because on my monitor it would just be so huge that I probably couldn't get back. Also here, before I close this out, and I'm trying not to move this around too much so you guys can see what's going on, you can disable compositing for full screen windows. This is something that you mainly would do for games. So if you have a game that you're playing in the full screen mode and it seems to be dragging, you can turn that off and see if that improves it. But if you get screen tearing, turn it back on. And of course, you can enable the timer when logging out. I like that. So if I hit the power key on the system or choose it from the menu, it will come up and it'll give me choices. Do I want to suspend, or do I want to shut down or restart? But then after 60 seconds it says, oh, just shut down. So that way I can just have the best of both worlds, and I can just hit the button and walk away and know that the machine will eventually log out. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. Hot corners. Hot corners you can set up to do different things. I'm not a big fan of hot corners. The way they work is that you take your mouse and you would move it up to the corner of the screen, and then it would automatically do something. And it depends on what you set. Here's where you work with languages. You can change things about the notifications that you see and how long they hang around. So let me hold still so you can see that for a while. That's something that's interesting to you. The default settings are fine. Here's the panel. And we've talked about that in past videos, setting this up and what it does. I like to have my panel intelligently hide, which I think is one of the really coolest things about the Cinnamon desktop. So how does the intelligent hiding work? Well, if I open a full screen application, so let me open LibreOffice Writer, you'll see that the panel disappears, so the application takes over the whole screen. But if I want it back, just go down here, hover the mouse at the bottom, and it reappears. I like that. And it is intelligent, which means that when the application closes, it comes back. Or if you have a smaller window that gets down here for some reason, the panel gets out of the way so you can see it. When you move it away, there you go. So that's very cool. I like that an awful lot. Okay, let's look at more settings here. Preferred applications is an important setting. And in preferred applications, here's where you tell the system what to use to open stuff. And you can also individually set it by file type. So like it says here that my music is being opened up by videos, but that's just files that I haven't already associated with my music player, which is QCD. So you can go through here and change your applications, and that's pretty straightforward. I don't really know what's in privacy. I haven't opened that myself. Yeah, this is just where it's like you can have it delete things out of the cache. Screensaver, this is an important one to take a look at, because when you first install the system, the screensaver comes on after like 5 or 10 minutes or something like that, and then it locks the screen. What I do is just turn it all completely off. I don't use the Mint screensaver at all, but I will have it lock the screen when the computer goes to sleep, and that's it. So you'll see I have that set to come on never, and only lock the screen when the computer's asleep. And that way when it wakes back up, you have to put your password in, which is a bit more secure. Startup applications, and this is the one that I actually forgot to cover in the first take of this video that I really wanted to make sure I talked about. This is where you can set the system up to open up applications at startup, and there's already some in here, as you can see. Now the Control Alternate Backspace is something that you definitely want. If for some reason your system locks up, your computer is probably not locked up. It's probably the desktop, and what you can do is use Alternate Control and Backspace to do a forced logout. So it'll just kill the X session, kill the desktop, and it will go back to your login screen, and you re-log in. You don't have to reboot the whole computer or hold down the power button and all that other stuff and risk losing data. So if you're new to Linux Mint, like from Windows, and you're used to alternate control delete in Linux, alternate control backspace during an X session or when your desktop is on, is going to give you the same sort of thing. It's just going to take you back to the login screen. Mint Upload is a program that allows you to upload to FTP sites. I really don't see why that has to be started at startup. The Mint Update feature, it is set on a delay for 20 seconds because my internet connection is a little weird. Actually, let me go in here and show you this. Because my internet connection is a little weird, sometimes it takes a little time to get hooked up to the machine, and I'll go ahead and let it come up in 60 seconds, or just wait a whole minute instead of the 20 seconds. Also, if you're creating a user account for somebody else on the system that does not have administrator privileges, you need to come into Startup Applications and disable this, simply because there's no need for them to see that the machine needs updates, because they can't install them anyway. Put this on your administrator account. And then we have some other things in here. The Mint welcome screen, we don't need that coming up. And support for NVIDIA Prime, don't need that either. Not running an NVIDIA card. Might be something you'd want if you had NVIDIA graphics. And we got some other things here, window tiling and workspaces. I'm not going to look at that. You can play around with that if you want to. If you have Bluetooth, this is where you set it up. If you want to adjust the color for your monitor, there it is. Mine came up just fine automatically. I don't have a problem. Here's where you would set up your displays. And if you had multiple displays, this is where you would do it. So you would do it right there. A graphics tablet, if you had like one of those writing tablets, that's where you would configure that. Keyboard, of course. This is where you can also come in and configure your keyboard shortcuts if you want to. Mouse and touchpad, that's self-explanatory. Networking is also self-explanatory. Power management, this is where you come in and you can set up what the system does. And this is why I just disabled the screensaver, because I just have it cut the monitor after 30 minutes, and if nobody touches it for an hour, then the machine automatically goes to sleep. I have it set up to ask when the power button is pressed. And remember, I set that timer on it, so if I don't make a selection, it'll go ahead and shut down in 60 seconds anyway. It's really groovy they have that in there, guys. That's like awesome. Okay, and here's where you configure printers. And if you have an HP printer, plug it in. It's configured. That's it. Now, if your printer is on a network, you'll have to have it go search for it and put that in. And if you have another brand of printer that is may or may not be supported with Linux, that might require a little research to get that going. But if you've got HP, it just works right out of the box, which I do. I buy HP printers because I know they work with Linux. Here's your sound settings, and here is your system info. It tells you everything about the system. You see that we're running Cinnamon. It's a 17.2 Cinnamon 64-bit 2.613 Cinnamon desktop, 316.0-38 kernel, and it's an AMD processor with 3 cores. There's 8 gigabytes of memory in the machine. 512 of that is taken by the internal video card. And then we have 3 hard drives totaling 232.3 gigabytes. Actually, that's 2 hard drives. You're not seeing number 3. Number 3 doesn't automatically mount a boot. So those are the 2 SSDs that are showing 232 gigabytes of online storage. And it shows the old video card and all that stuff. Going down to the next thing here, we have the driver manager. I'm not even going to open that. I do not have any proprietary drivers running on this machine at all. Here's an important one, the login window. If you're finding that the Mint Display Manager is locking up on you or doing crazy stuff, you might want to change the theme. The Mint X theme actually changes has all kinds of different backgrounds that change. And if you change it to something else, I have it on one that I like called Carbon, then it's not doing that, and that seems to make it a bit more stable. And finally, we'll talk about users and groups. And this is where you would set up users' accounts for other people on the machine. So let's open up Cindy's account. You can see here that you can put her picture in here. She is a standard user, and this also allows you to choose what groups that you and other users on the machine go into. And in her case, she's just in Cindy. She doesn't do anything else. However, a quirk of the Linux Mint system is that when you create a new user, a standard user, they automatically give them this no login. They put them in this group. No password login group, which means that they don't have to put a password in to log into the machine. I don't like that, so I obviously take them out. And as you can see, as an administrator, I'm in a bunch of groups, and that's just really cool. They have that all in one place, and you can take care of that. So those are all of the settings in the settings manager that I wanted to talk about. And if you saw the last video and you're watching this one, that's why it changed, because I actually forgot about some things. And a couple of other things I want to talk about. Let's, first of all, let me zoom back out and get to a full regular screen. And we're going to bring up a giant terminal. I'm going to make this really big so it's easy to see. Big fonts. There you go. And this is something that you will need to check if you have a solid-state drive in your computer, and I have 2 of them, is that Ubuntu, by default, will do an automatic trim operation once weekly. And if you know what a solid-state drive is, you know that you have to run the trim operation every now and again. It clears out the drive, and it balances the wear, and it makes the drive go faster and all that stuff. What we used to do was we used to put discard into the fstab file when the drives were mounted, and trim was on all the time, but that slows down the system. So with Ubuntu 14.04, what they have done, let me go ahead and open this file. What they have done is they have put in a cron job that once a week the system will run the fstrim command, and it does all of your solid state drives. However, when it's configured out of the box, it only will do this on Samsung and Intel drives. Now, according to the Ubuntu website on this subject, that it'll also do Intel, OCZ, and a couple of other brands, but here in the notation in this configuration file here, it says that it only does Intel and Samsung. I have an Intel drive in here and an OCZ Vertex. So just to make sure that it's going to trim all the drives when this operation comes around, I added this line down here, or rather this to the end, no model check. So if you'd like to know more about this, you can look up trim support in Ubuntu, and it should come up. The Ubuntu help wiki will tell you more about that. But this is something that you do need to be aware of, depending on what brand of drive you have. Now, if you have a Samsung or if you have an Intel drive, disregard this part of this video because you're already good to go. The system will take care of it by itself. One more thing to look at here if you do a lot of audio work, and this is something that you have to install, is the Pulse Audio Volume Control. And it's showing my little voice right now, and this is where you can go through and configure this system, and this will give you a lot of control over Pulse Audio and what you record, what the applications get, and what gets played through and all that stuff. So this is a very good tool to have, and to find it, all you have to do is open up the software manager and look for Pulse Audio Volume Control, and you want to have that on your system. I actually kind of need it because if I don't turn off the HDMI outputs on the sound card, then when I go to record these videos, I get a lot of static in the background. This is a Realtek card, and it's just a weird thing that happens with it. And it happened on Windows too, gang, so it's not a Linux deal. It's just something about this card in this old Dell computer. So thank you for watching the video. I certainly hope that was a help, and I think this video is a little better than the first one that I posted. And so if you're going to be playing around with Linux Mint 17.2, just some things to be aware of that you need to check out. I love Linux Mint 17.2. I've completely fallen in love with it. They have changed a lot of they fixed a lot of the bugs we've talked about before, and it's just so slick. I've actually got this running on 2 hardware machines in my house, and it works beautifully on both of them. So anyway, thank you for watching the video. If you would like me to help you get started with Linux, then please check out my webpage. It's easylinux.com, and I will hold your hand through the entire installation process, and we're not done until you're satisfied. So do check that out, easylinux.com. The link is in the description below, and I will talk to you again soon.